So you either are about to install or just installed iPadOS 26 Public Beta 1, and you're wondering exactly what to do because this is the biggest overhaul for any iPad operating system since it became its own operating system with iPadOS 13. From the new windowing mode, the new file system, all the different UI elements that have changed into liquid glass, this is going to be your one-stop shop to a complete walkthrough of what to do, what to expect, what top features there are, and finally, all the little nooks and crannies from a hidden feature standpoint that you should expect with iPadOS 26, so you get the full rundown of exactly what to do. So without further ado, let's talk all things iPadOS 26, because there's a lot more than what's under the hood. Let's get into it. But now before we continue, if you do enjoy videos like this one, definitely consider subscribing because it helps motivate us to make sure these come out in a timely manner and to make sure that you guys get educated on all the latest software updates from an Apple perspective. But now let's talk about iPadOS 26 and the supported devices because that's got to be the biggest surprise when it comes to this. Once you get over the fact of all this stuff that's so new, the second thing is that this is actually supported by a ton of different iPads. When Apple showed off this new windowing system, I anticipated this being for maybe the M-powered iPads like the iPad Air and the iPad Pro, but as long as you have an iPad that's running an A12 chip or newer, you are able to run the new windowing system. Now there are some differences in terms of what you can do with some of the higher end ones, like true extended monitor support and things like that, but on the iPad itself, if you're using the iPad as an iPad with the new windowing system and everything on the iPad itself, you'll be happy to hear that any iPad Pro running an A12X chip or newer, so it's a 2018 iPad Pro or newer, as well as the A14 iPad Air and newer, so that includes the A14 iPad Air, as well as the M series iPad Airs. Then you have the iPad 8th gen and newer, so the 8th, 9th, 10th, and then the A16 version of the iPad, and then finally you have the A12 chip or newer iPad mini, which I believe gives you the iPad 5th gen, 6th gen, and then of course the latest version, the 7th gen with the A17 Pro. So yes, the windowing system works on that tiny iPad mini display. But now that we have the supported devices out of the way, let's get into the actual walkthrough of everything you need to know with iPadOS 26. Well, alright everybody, welcome to iPadOS 26, and we're going to start off with the new UI, the liquid glass, and the new design, and the perfect way to start it off is by showing off exactly what you see here, which is going to be the more transparent look of all the widgets, as well as a clear look of all the applications, and you can see that some are a little bit better optimized than others. For instance, the first-party ones, like the FaceTime one, the Safari one, is better optimized than something like Affinity Photo. But for the most part, even third-party applications look pretty decent. But what I want to show off first here, or next up, is going to be in the actual lock screen. So if we long press on here, if we go to this one right here, you can see that things have changed a little bit when it comes to the lock screen. So for example, if I long press again to edit it, we'll customize it. You can see that you can now make this a little bit bigger, or actually a lot bigger moving forward. So you can see we have this little drop down or this drag corner spot right here that lets you elongate and make the actual text bigger. But one thing to note here is that it only works for this font. If you change it to this or any of the other ones, it will make it small again. But you can go here and you can make it as thin or as thick as you would like, depending on what you have going on. And you can see already how the liquid glass is working on here with the actual meter to thin out or thicken the text itself. But you can see that's what the liquid design looks like, or the liquid glass. And then of course, like I mentioned, you can make them larger or smaller, and then depending on what type of wallpaper you're using, it can actually hide between certain subjects or certain pieces. But now if we create one from scratch, you have the ability to, again, change up how these look. So for instance, this one's going to be the new live photo feature, which gives you this realistic kind of like panoramic look behind, and you can see that the actual text is hidden behind it. So if I click on this one, for instance, let it load up, as you can see, we're still in public beta 1, so it is a little bit iffy, but you can see that the actual numbers are hiding behind me as a subject. And then you can see if I move it around a little bit, you can see that the background is actually moving, but the subject is staying put right there. So I do like this new kind of dynamic wallpaper. Again, nothing functionally different, but something that's been fun to use over time. And then once we set our wallpaper pair right here, we click on here, and if we swipe up, you can see that there's a new animation where the things kind of just jump into place and kind of bop around a little bit. And we'll go back to our normal wallpaper. If you guys do enjoy these wallpapers, check out our channel membership because you get monthly wallpapers like this one custom made. The next piece of liquid glass that I want to show off is going to be in the control center. So the control center has seen some different iterations already because again, on the developer side, we've had 4 different betas ranging from a different amount of transparency and things of that nature. But let's open up something like Safari right here. Let's go to something that has a bunch of background stuff. Let's go to ESPN. If we click on the control center, you can see that some of that stuff does stay put. It does darken a little bit and it does kind of blur out what's going on behind it. But you can see that it is pretty liquid glassy for the most part. I like how it kind of bops around. You can see it's a little bit more circular. And the control center functionally has kind of remained the same, but you can see that as I'm moving it up and down on those little icons, they're kind of taking on the color of its background. So when I bring it over the black bar, they get a little darker. If it goes above where the scores are, you can see that it gets a little lighter. So it's a good illustration of what liquid glass UI is going to look like moving forward. And another great example is if I pull down on my notifications, you can see that the liquid glassiness start to kind of take over if you go slowly. So it kind of morphs over the background, and then it does show it off, eventually letting the rest of the background take place like the lock screen, and you can swipe up to bring it back. But you'll start to learn and see different UI elements throughout the entire operating system of what liquid glass is like, where it really shows off its transparency, where it kind of gets a little bit more opaque, and you'll just learn as you go. But again, it's just a UI difference. Functionally, most things are exactly the same. But now let's get into what's functionally new about iPadOS 26. So let's go into our settings first, because I know everybody's going to be wanting to play with the new windowing system, but if we go into our multitasking and gestures, this is what you're greeted with. So again, I have the windowed app version open because that's just how I want my default to be. But if you're somebody who just wants to have the iPad experience, how it's been for years, you can just do the regular full screen apps, and you also still have the ability to go to Stage Manager. One thing to note here, and we'll talk about how this all kind of plays out and how it splits up, something like slide over is actually gone now, or at least that original function is gone. There's kind of ways to mimic it, but slide over is completely gone no matter which instance you're using, even if you are on the full screen apps. And then split view is a little bit different, but still works just as well. But these are the options that you get, and you can close all windows after swiping home, automatically show and hide dock, which I'll show you guys in a second. But this is the windowing mode, and if I swipe up, let's show off exactly what this looks like. So let's open up a Chrome window here, and you can see that things are getting much more Mac-like right off the bat. So for instance, the first thing you notice up here is that you have your traffic light symbols of close, minimize, and go full screen. Again, if you close it, it will close it from the actual multitasking as well. So that means that it's actually closing out the app completely. Minimizing it just does exactly that. It'll minimize it and you can bring it right back up. And then of course to full screen it, it's gonna full screen it like you would normally do it yourself. And you can see that if I go up a little bit, that taskbar is actually there for every single application. So if you just kind of go up a little bit, you see you can click on Chrome, you have your files, your edit, format, view, history, bookmark, window, and of course they change depending on the corresponding application, and you can resize it as well right there. So I like how it's dynamic and moves from kind of the top left to kind of the center left when you are in full screen mode. But now, how do you open up a second application? Because that's what we've heard, that you can run a billion applications at once. You kind of go down here the same as you would before, and then just click on the application. Before, you actually had to drag the application in when you were using something like Stage Manager, but now you can just click on it like any normal application, and you can see that it's very responsive. It works well. You can kind of go off the actual screen itself just like you would on macOS. So it does just feel much more macOS-like. And again, this is just the beginning. So for instance, another thing that's very macOS-like is the new tiling system. So if I either hover over or long press on it, you can go split view and resize them into different tiles. You can actually third it up horizontally, and you can even do quad box if you would like to. So of course we have two right here, so I'll click on that one. We'll long press here, we'll go side by side here, and you have your normal side by side split view that we've been so accustomed to. But what I like about it is that it even keeps this little bar right here, so you can resize it, move it around like you would on any other split view. Again, the only thing that's missing from the previous version of multitasking is going to be that slide over view. But now if I want to open up, let's say, another application like the Home app, right? If I open up the Home app, I can go on here and I can just tile view it if I want to. And of course, I only have 3 applications open, so it's only going to tile in this way. But also, at least horizontally, that little bar stays. So let's open up one more application, maybe the Notes app. We have our tile set up here, but you can see that we can actually resize them like this. So if you really want to, you can actually do this kind of interesting looking, kind of side-by-side trapezoid looking quad box, which is cool to see. And then of course, you're gonna need to learn 2 gestures. So if you do wanna open up another application, you swipe up like you would normally, and you can see that the applications flag out on the right and on the left-hand side. If I wanna open up something like LumaFusion, for instance, I can do that. And now I have my LumaFusion open and I can actually make it smaller, and you can see that all the applications are still there and they remain behind the actual LumaFusion application. But now if you completely want to get rid of all the applications, you're going to want to swipe up once and then swipe up again, and then everything kind of flanks out. So that's kind of the new gesture bases that you're going to need to learn as you play around with iPadOS 26. And then another quick one that came over from macOS before we continue with the windowing is if you shake your mouse or you misplace your mouse and you move it around a lot, it'll actually get larger like it does on macOS. And I know that happens a ton with people when it comes to macOS and losing their cursor, but that's always good to know. And then when it comes to actual multitasking, if I swipe up like I was going to go to the multitasking menu, you still have the normal multitasking that you've seen in years past. And then if I open up one of these, and let's say I want to open up the applications again, let's go here, let's go into Chrome, let's go into the home, let's go into the notes application, and then you have something called expose mode. So if you swipe up and kind of hold it there, you get this expose mode, which shows you all the different open applications that you have open at once. So again, there's a lot of different ways to really manipulate what you're doing when it comes to multitasking inside of this new windowing system, and you can just click on them and then you go back to the normal view. Another quick way that I've been actually pulling up another application is just by pressing Cmd+Space. That lets you open up the search bar. Let's say I want to type in LumaFusion, I press enter, and then LumaFusion does open. Another piece that I wanted to show off, which they added in one of the betas, is the swipe across gesture. So one of the big things with iPadOS that we've had for years is being able to swipe between full screen applications. So being able to do something like this. They did add this now with the public beta, which is great to see. And what I like about it is that it does work with large applications. So of course, full screen applications will work, and then it'll take you over to another windowing mode if that's what you have open. So you can see that I have my multitasking windowing mode here. I swipe over, my full screen application is here, swipe over again, another full screen application, and I continue to swipe. I have my Safari, and then you can just keep going until you run out of the full screen applications or the kind of windowing systems that you have right here. So again, multitasking for me has been wonderful. I absolutely love it. Split view is still kind of there. Slide over is missing, which some people are kind of annoyed about. But overall, I've just been loving this new version of multitasking on the iPad because it makes it feel much more productive than it has in the past. Right, next up is going to be probably my favorite update, which is going to be the Files application. So the Files application got a complete overhaul, and there was always something missing with the Files application that I really couldn't pinpoint when I would use the iPad and the Files application. It had, I guess, all the necessary features, but it just still didn't feel like the Finders application that we wanted. So first and foremost, of course we've had this view before, but the first thing I want to show off is just how easy it is to kind of manipulate everything how it was before. So of course you can go into this list view, but this was not available before, being able to resize your columns based on whatever you want. So you can make it as small as you want, as big as you want, or as big as it lets you go, but now we can resize them so we can fit more information that we see fit. You have your three dots right here to be able to add more categories of data. So if I want to do date created, you can do that, and you can continue to add them. You can add pretty much as many as you want. You have your iCloud status, and you can resize them however you see fit and swipe across them like you would on macOS. So I'm going to take those off because I don't need all that information. Now, one of my absolute favorite updates to the Files application is that you can now pin folders to your dock. So if you right click on any folder, you can press to add to favorites, which we would do before, but now we can add it to the dock. So if I go down here and pull up my dock, I now have my desktop. So what I normally do is I'll have my iCloud desktop pinned to my dock, so I'm able to access it whenever I see fit or whenever I want to. So now whenever I save files to my desktop, I can easily access them right here, and you can actually open them up like you would like a normal kind of fan mode when it is on macOS, but then you can also right click on here to get more options, like options show in files. You can get the grid view, so if I click on here, it now looks like a grid instead of the actual fan look. So it just looks and feels more macOS-like. Now sometimes the UI is a little bit iffy because of course it's brand new, but overall the functionality is there and I absolutely love it. The Files application has gotten way better than it was before. And then another thing that you can do with folders themselves is, let's say I go on my iPad, in any folder, I can right click on here and actually customize everything. So you have this new option to customize folder and tags. So you can actually change the color, add emojis, you can add different tags, and of course the colors indicate certain tags, so they are searchable, which is great to see. So if I want to make it red, I can make it red. If I want to add multiple people on here, I can, or lungs, or whatever the case is, a signature if I want to. And then of course, if you're done, you can just clear it, go back to your tags, go back to just normal, so just uncheck it, and it'll go back to blue, and then it'll go back to all the normal stuff before. And of course, even if you do have it down here, it'll still have that same color if you do customize those folders as you see fit. So Files application, by far, was the best update aside from the windowing system, of course. Now those to me were the biggest updates to iPadOS 26, and they're really kind of transforming what it means to have a computer and what an iPad is. But we did get some new applications that I wanted to show off. So for instance, we have a brand new preview application. So this preview application is very similar, or pretty much exactly the same as the one that you have on macOS. You can see all the stuff that's in your cloud, all the recent files that you've opened, and you can customize, open, sign, autofill. It's pretty much just a PDF manager, which I love to see. So if I open up this one, you can actually, annotate it if you want to. You can click on the three dots, you can undo, flip horizontally, rotate, remove background if it makes sense to remove the background. You can sign things if you need to. You can export them and then save them to your desktop and do whatever you see fit. So the preview application, very robust and pretty much just killed all PDF editors. The next one that came to the iPad, which I don't know why it was missing to the iPad, is the journal application. You can now use the journal application. It syncs across all your devices. You can handwrite using the Apple Pencil if you do want to do your journal entries, and it's just a better canvas overall in order to actually take a nice little journal entry for your iPad. The next application that was brought over is this new Game Center application. So Game Center has been around for a while, but this is the first time it's getting a dedicated application, and it pretty much consolidates everything that has to do with gaming on the iPad into one application. So you have your home over here, you have the arcade section, you have your play together section, and then of course you can search on here, and lastly you can go up here to see your achievements that you've unlocked over the years. Now this is, again, years and years and years of different games that I've been playing with Game Center like 12 years ago. That's crazy. If you go all the way down here 14 years ago, cut the rope. So again, just something to take into account. Apple just created a nice little Game Center application for you to be able to go in there and kind of manage that as you see fit. And then lastly, you have a dedicated phone application. They did bring a phone application to both iPadOS and macOS this year. I don't really understand why, but it is nice to know that you can now manage everything from here. Now, this does not mean that your cellular data enabled iPad has its own phone number. This is strictly going to be for FaceTime voice calls, FaceTime video calls, and then some call forwarding as well. So you can see that there are phone numbers here that are being shown, so I can receive regular phone calls, but they're the phone calls coming into my iPhone that just happen to be next to my iPad. So there is no way to call a phone number directly to this iPad. I just wanted to clear that up for some people because, again, some people might be curious, but what's good is that you can actually make phone calls directly from here. So you can do that and it'll seem like it's either a FaceTime audio call and it'll use data, or it's going to seem like it's coming from your personal phone number or your iPhone to whatever the person is that you're calling. So that is a phone application, a nice little addition. We didn't ask for it, but I do enjoy it. And now the final thing I wanted to bring up is in the Notes application. So we got a few new things in the Notes application. The first one being that we got a brand new stylus. I believe this is for calligraphy. So you can see that there's a bunch of different options as to how this works. I'm definitely not the right person to kind of show off what this is like, but if you grab your Apple Pencil, you can start to write on there. And then some final little other tidbits with the Notes application is that you can actually export this or share it as a markdown file. I'm not 100% sure why that's important, but people seem to really appreciate the fact that you can export as a .mp file, and that is now possible directly from iPadOS. And then lastly, Math Notes did get a little bit of an update that you are now able to do 3D graph rendering and add even more variables to certain applications or certain, math problems that you do see fit. So those are all things that are welcome upgrades to iPadOS 26 and the Notes application, and that is everything from a high level that you should know from iPadOS 26. So learn how to use the multitasking, learn the new windowing mode, learn the new file system, and then also the last thing I do want to bring up is that control center and management of different audio inputs is now much, much easier. So if you do plug in something, you're able to then decide where you want that audio input to come from a native holistic level. So if I plug in a microphone, you'll be able to see that you can choose that you want all the audio input to come in from that microphone by default, system-wide, versus defaulting to the iPad speakers, which is a great little add-on, especially if you record on an iOS device. Sadly, multiple audio sources is still not available, so if you want to play a YouTube video and Apple Music at the same time, we will not be able to do that, but maybe that's something for iPadOS 27. Let's finish up this video, everybody. Now, that will just about do for this video, everybody. As you saw, iPadOS and iPadOS 26 looks pretty much completely different to how it was with iPadOS 18. The new UI elements, the liquid glass, the windowing system, the Mac-like features that it's gotten with the traffic lights in the windowing system, being able to have 12 applications open at the same time, not being limited to Stage Manager that was before kind of the windowing system of the past. And again, it just kind of solidifies what Apple wants the iPad to be. They've done a great job here of, yes, giving us as much Mac-like features as possible, like we mentioned during this video, but then also still making it feel truly iPad-like. It's still not a one-to-one comparison to macOS. You still have some of those iPad limitations, sort of, but for the most part, I do think that Apple's really closed the gap as to what people want and what people can use as their main computer. That line is beginning to blur very heavily at what the computer is, which is an ad that Apple ran I believe almost 10 years ago now at this point, and it's finally coming into fruition, which as an iPad first user, I very well welcome. But that'll do for this video. Leave a comment down below your favorite feature of iPadOS 26. Excited to have a discussion down below, and maybe also talk to me about some of those little hidden features that you may have noticed that maybe I forgot to mention. But that'll do it, everybody. Thanks so much for watching. If you made it to the end, leave a dolphin in the comments down below, and if you enjoy videos like this one, you'll probably like one of these videos right here to get some more nuanced steps on each individual piece of iPadOS 26. Until next time, I'm Fernando. Peace, everybody.